Welcome to Apologetics and Prophecy, the official podcast of Calvary Solid Ground, a remnant church in Orangevale, California. I am Pastor Jed, and I will be your host as we bring you Bible studies and updates put through an apologetical and biblical lens to see just how close we are to the return of our Lord. Thank you for joining us today. Maranatha, everyone. So glad that you could join us for this Friday edition of Apologetics and Prophecy, where we do a prophecy update. And of course, we have breaking news for you that we are going to put through an apologetical and biblical lens to see just how close we are to the return of the Lord. And we are never short of stories to share with you. A matter of fact, I usually have to sift them and only pick out some because there are so many. But just to remind us of the times that we're living in, the times that are coming, I just want to refer us to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 5 through 7, where it says, do you not remember that when I was still with you, I told these things? What's that? About the Antichrist, the tribulation period, the rapture of the church. That's what Paul's reminding. And now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. So a very important scripture here telling us that we already see the mystery of lawlessness at work, but we see it restrained. We see it not fully at its crescendo that we see in the tribulation period, but we see it continuing to increase more and more, because it goes on to tell us in 2 Thessalonians in chapter 2, verses 9 through 12, the coming of the lawless one, the Antichrist, is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion, that they may believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not receive the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So we should see all of this kind of coming to a head now in our news stories. Do we see lies, deceptions, delusions, all of these things coming to a head? But of course, we understand and know that when it comes to prophecy and when it comes to current events, when it comes to breaking news, that of course, Israel is the one that's front and center of all of these things. And of course, we know that the Israel as a nation, of course, is the hour hand, and of course, Jerusalem, of course, is the minute hand, but the Temple Mount is the second hand. Well, we just had Jerusalem Day since the last time that we met, which was the day that they reunified Jerusalem in the 1967 war. But this is interesting headline that came out. Smotrich vows to rebuild temple during Jerusalem Day celebrations. And so this is a big news story. You know, they keep talking about building this temple, and these are Jewish people that are in power in Israel that are talking about these things. So it is news, right? It says that call by far-right finance minister, of course you have to understand this is liberal news, right? Call by far-right finance minister would entail the destruction of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Far-right Israeli finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has called for the rebuilding of a Jewish temple on the site of Al-Aqsa Mosque and for the expansion of Israel's borders and Jewish settlements in Gaza. In speech addressing crowds at a Jerusalem Day rally on Monday, which celebrates Israelis' occupation of the old city of Jerusalem, Smotrich has also called for complete redemption and reconstruction of the temple here, referring to Al-Aqsa Mosque, which settlers had raided earlier. We are conquering the land of Israel, liberating Gaza, settling Gaza, and defeating the enemy, Smotrich said to crowds as they chanted death to Arabs as they marched through Jerusalem's old city and attacked Palestinians. This is all a lie, by the way. This is not what happened. This is a liberal news source that's telling us this. With God's help, we will expand Israel's border, bring about complete redemption, and rebuild the temple here. That is exactly what he said. All this other stuff about chanting death to Arabs, that didn't happen, right? Israel is not afraid of the word occupation, he said. Some people are afraid of victory. We are not afraid of victory, he said. Let's give strength to our brave and heroic fighters. And so And of course, we're talking about the war in Gaza, and he's saying that in a few months we will be able to declare that we won. Gaza will be totally destroyed, Smotrich said. In another 6 months, Hamas won't exist as a functioning entity. And what they're saying is, they weren't chanting death to Arabs. They were chanting they wanted to defeat Hamas because they have, October 7th was instigated by Hamas. They were the ones who started the war. Israel's going to finish it. And of course, that's what's going to happen. Of course, we just had a milestone a couple days ago. It was the 600th day since October 7th, which is really hard to believe. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that it's almost been 2 years that they've been fighting this war against Hamas. And of course, we haven't helped. We've been tying their hands for the last administration, and this administration seems to be dragging their heels too, which to a war that should have been over a long time ago. Gaza's not that big. They should have been wiped out a long time ago. But we need to stop short. We have to understand that there are friends in our administration, and this video right here shows us that we still that we're still friends with Israel, which is a good thing for us.
Greetings from Israel's eternal and undivided capital, the holy city of Jerusalem. Beginning this evening is Yom Yerushalayim, also known as Jerusalem Day. The United States is proud to join our close ally Israel in celebrating the 58th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. After 2,000 years of exile, yearning and praying toward Jerusalem, God fulfilled the prayer next year in Jerusalem by restoring the eternal capital of the Jewish people under Israeli sovereignty. You can see the beautiful old city of Jerusalem right behind me. And I would tell you that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, reaffirmed the historic connection of the Jewish people to Jerusalem that goes back over 3,500 years when he had the moral clarity to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital, and then moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. On this Jerusalem Day, as thousands of Israeli soldiers are away from their families, courageously fighting terrorists in Gaza, and 58 hostages are still being held captive in the dungeons of Gaza, I want the people of Israel to know that America stands with you. Your fight is our fight. Your enemies are our enemies. Israel's victory is our victory. And together we will prevail, and we will pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Happy Jerusalem Day.
We have to remember that words do mean things. And when people say things now, will it show in our actions towards Israel? We definitely see a big difference between this administration and the last one. Elections have consequences, and we engaged in the process because of Israel. That was our main concern of everything because of what the prior administration was doing. And we agree with everything that Huckabee said. Huckabee couldn't have said it better with an American flag and an American. I'm proud to hear things like that from our country. So keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, just like he said. We are commanded to do it. And it is glad to see that at least in speech and in principle, we are still standing for Israel because we know eventually the whole world will turn its back on Israel. But something else interesting just happened the other day, too, was this. Israel confirms plans to create 22 new settlements in occupied West Bank. Now, before a lot of the stuff happened with Iran and when Donald Trump first became president, there was some talk with this first visit with Netanyahu to actually recognize the West Bank as Judea and Samaria and annex it, or at least portions of it, to Israel. Now, we understand and know that when you look at the partition plan in the deal of the century that Donald Trump had originally revealed before his whole thing fell apart in 2020, the map that was included in that showed a lot of these settlements already in it. So it's interesting that we see these things happening that way. But it says the defense minister says move presents establishment of a Palestinian state that would endanger Israel. Israel has said it will establish 22 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, including the legislation of outposts already built without government authorization, after a security cabinet vote held in secret last week. Israel occupied the West Bank, capturing it from Jordan in the Six-Day War of 1967. Since then, successive governments have tried to permanently cement Israel's control over the land, in part by declaring swaths of state lands, which prevents private Palestinian ownership. So here's the map that they released of these 22 different settlements. And you have to understand that these are lands with nothing on them. These are lands without nothing on them. But you'll notice some of the names, there that are interesting. But really, we have to understand this is not the West Bank. This is Judea and Samaria. These, and of course, we have to understand that most of this area and where these settlements are, if you notice, are on the mountains of Israel. And we know from Bible prophecy, as being Bible prophecy students, that Israel will have to be settled onto and have authority over the mountains of Israel before the abomination of desolation. If we know our Bible prophecy, we understand the literal fulfillment of it. We understand the mountains of Israel play an important role. And if you look at a topographical map of Israel, you'll notice that the place that people call the West Bank or occupied is the mountains of Israel. And they will be occupied by Israel. We think and believe that, part of the covenant that the Antichrist will confirm will be the reunification of the entire land of Israel to the people, the Jewish people, as a way of peace. And we really think that's what's going to happen, because it will set up the time of safety that will bring about the invasion of Ezekiel 38 and 39. So, but anyway, we have this, and then, of course, we have what happened. If you missed, I was on Kurt Reed's show last week. I was in Vegas last week, at Billy's church, but I stopped by and visited Kurt. And he let me sit in on his midweek Maranatha with him last week, and we had a great time, discussing the things of Israel. And we talked about the two Messianic Christian Jewish people that were slaughtered outside the Holocaust Museum in D.C. Well, we have more news coming out, and it's very interesting that the Democrats are trying to protect this guy that shot these two people, which it's hard for me to even fathom. But Democratic Socialists of America defend accused D.C. Jewish museum shooter Elias Rodriguez as political prisoner. And this article goes on to say that he was. They called for his a caucus of the far-left Democrat Socialists of America, DSA, has praised Elias Rodriguez, who was charged with murdering two Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. last week, and called for his relief from prison. The Liberation Caucus, self-described Marxist-Leninist Maoist faction of the DSA, announced on Tuesday that the organization added its name to an official statement from the far-left group Unity of Fields, which applauded the shooting of Yaron Lishtinsky, 30, and Sarah Milgram, 26, last Wednesday evening as they were leaving an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. Elias Rodriguez targeted attacks on two Jewish diplomat staff on May 21st, 2025, was a legitimate act of resistance against the Zionist state and its genocidal campaign in Gaza. Unity of Fields said in a statement, after 20 months of nonstop apocalyptic violence wrought by the Zionist movement inflicted upon Palestinian civilians striving for national liberation, as well as on the freedom fighters advancing the national liberation after 20 months of political and legal repression by the same Zionists against our international movement opposing their campaign of total destruction, the time has now come for real consequences. So they're supporting murder. People, innocent civilians that are American citizens and Jewish citizens on American soil, and think that that's perfectly okay. Now, this guy you see in the picture in the news article, when they went to arrest him, he was just sitting there like nonchalantly, like he just got done having a cup of coffee or lunch with a friend, totally calm as ever. But when they did arrest him, this is what we witnessed.
Outside! No. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Funny for a guy that's never going to see another free day in his life. But the point is, though, is that the only thing that Palestine is going to be is Israel until the time of the second coming. Now, Israel's going to go through some troubles during the tribulation period, but the Jews are not going anywhere. They can stomp their feet, they can march, they can do anti-Semitic behavior, they can spray paint churches, they can do all the stuff that they do. But it's not going to make a lick of difference, because Bible prophecy will come to pass. And we do live in biblical days. But it's interesting. We have these stories in a row that started last week and came up to Thursday. And earlier in the week, like Monday, Tuesday, we had this story. Trump says Iran talks progressing, seeks Gaza de-escalation. So, you know, he says that the giving away the farm to Iran and the dragging of their feet to continue to build nuclear weapons, that Trump just doesn't want to get in a war. But this is what happened. And then, the next day, this story comes out. Netanyahu threatens to strike Iran nuclear sites, scuttling talks. So there seems to be this back and forth. You know, Israel's talking about striking Iran at the same time America is trying to start peace, and then this tiff for tat is going between Trump and Netanyahu, because the next story came out and said, Trump, I told Netanyahu striking Iran would be a very inappropriate. His deal is close. So we'll see about this deal, but I really don't. I really don't think that's going to happen. But we'll see what happens. But, you know, we know that Iran will eventually, along with Russia and Turkey at some point or another, when Israel is in peace, when she settles this whole thing that's going on, will come and attack Israel. I believe that will happen during the tribulation period. So that means we're pretty close. But another thing that we need to know, and I found this video very fascinating. Of course, this is Scott Pelley, the king of fake news, CBS 60 Minutes, a Trump hater. But we need to remember, and we're going to look at some stories after this. This is breaking news, right? This guy last week was at a graduation ceremony, and he's telling you, accusing the other side of doing exactly what they do. He's accusing the other side of doing exactly what they do. Now, let's listen to this.
But in this moment, this morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack. And insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts. The fear to speak in America. Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives. They can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
Yeah, there's nothing new in it. It's the playbook they've been playing all along. They're the ones who were telling us that we would need to shut up about, all the, anti-COVID rhetoric that we were preaching from, telling churches to shut down. These are the same guys that were pulling all the shenanigans from 2020 on, that all of a sudden now they lose power and they are telling you exactly what they have been doing. And we know that the Bible told us that in Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And of course, that's exactly what we see. And so elections have consequences. And so usually if what they say, the other side is doing the exact opposite of what they say. So can we see that? Can we see that? Well, let's check this out. Remember our good friend James Comey? He had a death threat that he just had, takes a turn. I don't know if you know about this or not, but this happened since the last time we met. A formal letter has just been sent to Secret Service Director Sean Curran and FBI Director Kash Patel, calling for an immediate joint investigation into James Comey after he posted a disturbing message on social media using the phrase 86 in reference to President Trump. That term is widely understood to mean kill or eliminate. The letter demands a full probe into potential violations of federal law, including 18 U.S.C. S. 871, threats against the president, and 18 U.S.C. S. 875, interstate threats. It also presses for answers on whether Comey still holds a security clearance or has access to classified material. The same left that spent years crying about terrorism is silent now. But silence isn't justice. If Comey broke the law, he doesn't get to hide behind his badge or his politics. He belongs in handcuffs. Well, if you haven't seen the post, here it is. He says that, and we'll listen to his explanation in a minute, but he posted this thing that says 8647 on the beach. Cool shell formation on my beach walk. Yeah, okay. And and you want to hear, of course, we always say you want to know when a leftist politician is lying, when his lips are moving. You want to see what that looks like. Here, let's watch.
We were walking on the beach. We went to the beach to prepare for this week, which was the launch of my book, and to think about the book and to prepare to answer questions about it. And we were walking back towards the road, and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, why would someone put an address in the sand? And I said, I don't know. And we stood over it, and I said, I think it's some kind of like political message. And she said, 86, when I was a server, she did a lot of work in restaurants, meant to remove an item from the menu when you ran out of ingredients. And I said, well, to me, as a kid, it always meant to leave a place, to ditch a place. I said, that's really clever. So then she said, you should take a picture of that. And I did. And I posted it on my Instagram account and thought nothing more of it until I heard through her that people were saying it was some sort of a call for assassination, which is crazy. But I took it down. Even if I think it's crazy, I don't want to be associated with violence of any kind.
And then what happened?
I got a call from the Secret Service that night asking if I would speak to them about it. Of course. I admire the Secret Service. They're pros. I spoke to them on the phone. Then they asked the next day when I got home, would I be willing to come in and meet them in person at the Washington field office, which again I did, and they were pros again.
I'm telling you, that's all a bunch of lies. Tell me the head of the FBI does not know what 86 means. He has to have a discussion with his wife. Well, I thought... Come on, this guy is just crazy, but it doesn't end there. We found out, like I said, You heard Scott Pelley telling, what they're accusing us of is actually the opposite of what's happening. And we're seeing a lot of stories come out this breaking news. This one here, Dan Bongino, FBI discovered room full of hidden evidence from Comey era. Yeah, it doesn't get good for Comey. It says, FBI Deputy Director Don Bongino announced Thursday that the Bureau has uncovered a room filled with previously hidden and mishandled evidence from the tenure of former FBI Director James Comey, raising new questions about eternal practices during one of the most controversial eras in the Bureau's recent history. During an appearance on Fox and Friends, Bongino discussed the findings and said the discovery could have serious implications for Comey and others who led the FBI during and after the 2016 election. Wait till you read this stuff that's coming out, Bongino said. You're gonna be stunned. And so, like I said, they're always accusing us of doing what they did. And then, of course, what we're doing, or this other side is doing, is opposite of what they are saying. And, of course, here's another news story to come out, just breaking news. This one here, domestic violent extremists. Biden targeted COVID vaccine critics, new documents show. Remember, Scott Pelley said that journalism is under attack. Information and freedom of speech is under attack. You mean like it was when we were out there, blowing the whistle on all of the evil from the 2020 fiasco that happened? Oh, yeah. And how bad did it get when Biden became president? It says the Biden administration designated critics of COVID-19 vaccine and mask mandates domestic violent extremists, according to documents declassified last week by Tulsi Gabbard, director of the National Intelligence, following a Freedom of Information Act. Remember how hard they came upon her to actually confirm her, and we were worried. I'll tell you, I was skeptical because of some of her background and the fact that she used to be a Democrat. I mean, but let's listen to her own words.
Done here, what was done under the Biden administration. Was it they were saying that everyone who opposed, say, mask mandates or the vaccination of children are domestic violent extremists? Or were they saying that those are opinions often held by domestic violent extremists?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. That when you look at the language of these documents that I've declassified, first, the strategic implementation plan of the Biden administration's designation of potential violent domestic extremists, it really talks about people who may likely turn out to be domestic violent extremists, or those who may likely turn to violence because of these specific quote-unquote ideologies that they hold. And there's a consistent thread through here that these ideologies that they are designating as turning into potentially violent activities or being manifested in violent activities happen to be those of people who were using their First Amendment rights to oppose certain policies of the Biden administration. And while some of the examples that are focused on there have to do with those who opposed the COVID vaccine mandates, those who opposed the mask mandates, parents who were concerned that their children going to school may be forcibly vaccinated with the COVID vaccine without the consent or awareness of parents. The list goes on, but it's not exclusive to this. In some of these reports that we've declassified, it shows that people who were opposed to Biden's border policy, for example, could therefore have propensities to join a militia or could become these domestic violent extremists that we're talking about here. And again, it's important to look at this in the totality and the sequence of how this happened. These documents were issued in December of 2021. You remember very well, Will, the speech, the ominous speech that President Biden gave in 2022, where with this red background and Marines standing in the background, he issued an address to the nation warning the American people that Donald J. Trump and MAGA Republicans pose a direct threat to the fabric of our republic. And then you put that together with how the FBI and others within the Biden administration directed social media companies to censor Americans and undermine our First Amendment rights because, of course, the social media companies don't want to be in a position to support the spread of domestic violent extremism. So when you look at all of these things together, you understand at its core the thing that I committed to the American people to root out, which is the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community and national security state against the American people.
You know, Director, it's a little bit like that analogy or the test that I had to take when I took the law school entrance exam.
So we just heard from Scott Pelley. Now, Scott Pelley made an insinuation that the new administration is the one responsible for all of these things that she is saying the other administration was doing. And these things are being exposed. But, you know, one thing that she did not mention that we've talked about, that ever since the Obama days, the same list is, do you know who else is on that list as becoming potential domestic extremists? Pre-tribulation premillennialists. Those who believe that Jesus Christ is coming again to set up a kingdom on earth. Obama put us on that list years ago, and we've been talking about that for a long time. But what else did we see breaking this week? We also saw U.S. drops COVID vaccine recommendation for healthy kids and pregnant women. I call this a day late and a dollar short, but we'll take the win when we can get it. The U.S. has stopped recommending routine COVID-19 vaccinations for pregnant women and healthy children. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced on social media post on Tuesday, circumventing the CDC's traditional recommendation process. Kennedy, FDA Commissioner Marty Makary, and National Institute of Health Director, I can't pronounce his last name, said in a video that the shots have been removed from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention recommended immunization schedule. And of course, here's the video they put out for that ad.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
I mean, that's good news, but what about the poor children that listened to the lies that Scott Pelley says the new administration is doing, but the last administration didn't do, right? Scott Pelley would have been perfectly happy if Kamala Harris would have continued on with the push for shots and boosters. What about those poor children that are suffering acute health effects because of that? You know, he said right away there's no scientific evidence. There wasn't. And it's very unfortunate. I think they need to put a stop to the whole thing. But it's slowly coming out one step at a time. Let's just continue to pray and hope that they get rid of all of it. But of course, this is good news, real good news. HHS terminates $700 million in Moderna bird flu vaccine funding, cites ethical and scientific concerns, which is good. This is actually a blow to exactly what we were talking about when we were getting censored and all the stuff Scott Pelley says the administration's doing now, which we have freedom to do now. Do you realize that this prophecy update on YouTube would have been canceled? I'd have to do this only on Rumble and on the app. But now that now that there's a new sheriff in town, now that the public has gotten wind to what they were doing in the past, now it's okay. And so you scratch your head, in 4 years, it could change again. That's just the way our government here works. We know eventually where it's going. But for now, it's pretty interesting that these things are happening. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has officially canceled over $700 million in federal funding for Moderna's mRNA-based bird flu vaccine, citing scientific and ethical concerns. The decision was confirmed by HHS Communication Director Andrew Nixon on May 29th. After a rigorous review, we concluded that continued investment in Moderna's H5N1 mRNA vaccine was not scientifically or ethically justifiable, Nixon told the Epoch Times. The reality is that now listen to this. This is important. The reality is that mRNA technology remains under-tested, and we are not going to spend taxpayer dollars repeating the mistakes of the last administration, which concealed legitimate safety concerns from the public. Wait a minute. I thought Scott Pelley was accusing the current administration of doing that. And we just found out the last administration did. And we know all this, right? Here's what the mainstream media has to say about it, and you'll see what I'm talking about here.
Administration has canceled a contract with Moderna for the development of a bird flu vaccine for humans. Our Angelica Peebles joins us now with more, and you could conjecture a lot of things about this between RFK Jr. and vaccines and mRNA. What's behind all this, Angela?
Yeah, good morning, Joe. So this is just the latest in a string of events that we've seen related to COVID vaccines over the last week. And what's happening here is that the Trump administration is canceling a more than $700 million contract with Moderna to develop a bird flu vaccine and other pre-pandemic influenza viruses. And so what's really notable about this is that obviously we've seen this, we've seen bird flu tearing through birds and also dairy cows and the risk to humans. And so what we saw in the Biden administration is that they really ramped up this work, and they were helping to fund, they were going to fund a phase 3 trial to see if we could use mRNA for a bird flu vaccine if it indeed spills over to humans. And now the cancellation of this vaccine is quite a surprise. Maybe not a surprise now, because we had been hearing rumblings about this for the past few months. But, we just saw this this contract ramp up right before the last administration left. And now you have the Trump administration saying that they felt like after a rigorous review, we concluded that the continued investment in Moderna's H5N1 mRNA vaccine was not scientifically or ethically justifiable. And they're saying that it's not just about efficacy, it's about safety. And so it's interesting to hear them really casting doubt on just the safety and the efficacy of mRNA vaccines as a whole.
Somebody better get them a tissue. They seem like they're getting ready to cry because the death shots are being canceled. All right, yeah, I'm really glad to hear about that. But of course, Scott Pelley would tell you that this is a affront to freedom and an affront to health and an affront to inclusion and all of that. But what about this next story? This is big news, too. RFK Jr. demands medical community halt child sex change producers following damning HHS review. You mean the reality of the danger of giving children puberty blockers and chopping off their body parts is actually making rational sense to somebody? Not to Scott Pelley. Now you're holding off on diversity. You're making it illegal for inclusion. We wouldn't want to, Scott Pelley's talking, this is dangerous, right, if we do this. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. issued a forceful directive Wednesday urging doctors and state medical boards to immediately end sex change procedures on minors, citing a federal review that found a risk of significant harm associated with such interventions. In a letter sent to healthcare providers across the nation, RFK Jr. warned that puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries are medically questionable and potentially dangerous. He demanded providers revise treatment protocols and cease relying on controversial clinical guidelines created by the World Professional Association on Transgender Health. That's the W path, and we've talked about them before. They were the ones that they were saying we did an update with them and all of this. And so, but what other lies do we hear? What about the UN? The UN is constantly spouting all these lies about what's happening in Gaza. And we have a couple stories here to show you that just like Scott Pelley is accusing the other side of doing something that they did, that they're doing the opposite. We're seeing that again. What about the UN? Here's a little a truth blurb about something that the UN did recently.
Yesterday, the UN chief lied and said that 14,000 babies were about to die of malnutrition in Gaza in the next 48 hours.
There are 14,000 babies that will die in the next 48 hours unless we can reach them.
He then retracted his statement, but here's the problem. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. That lie has now spread around the world, from my kids' TikToks to the BBC to Katie Couric, Miss Rachel Glennon Doyle. I mean, I guess some of those are the usual suspects, but these people are spreading lies, and it's gone so far, and it's just like what happened with Al-Shifa Hospital and the New York Times. The New York Times played an enormous role in the sparking of worldwide hatred of Israel and Jews through their misreporting of the Al-Shifa Hospital incident in October of 2023. It's the same exact thing we are seeing now. Yesterday was a terrible day for Israel because the UN chief humanitarian officer, an organization that we know hates the Jews, lied. And that lie is now too late to retract. Having a small print retraction after this has already been out, it's too late.
So what is the truth? If the babies aren't dying in Gaza, where are they dying? Well, let's look at, they're always accusing the other side of doing something that they're doing. So what's happening to that if they're doing it, can we see proof on the other side? And we can. This is the next story here. 2-week-old Israeli baby born in C-section dies after terror attack dies. Yes, this is a very sad story, but this is the reality of it all. It says 2-week-old Israeli baby born in emergency C-section after terror attack dies. Earlier this month, his mother, Tiza Gies, was shot while being driven to the hospital to give birth, later dying of her injuries. A baby born who was delivered by emergency C-section 2 weeks ago after his mother was shot by a terrorist has died due to injuries suffered during the attack. Israel media reported on Thursday morning that Ravid Chaim Giz, who was 2 weeks old, has passed away. He was being cared for at the Schneider Children's Hospital in Petah Tikva. So, again, we see the exact opposite happening. It's Jewish babies that are dying, but yet the news doesn't want to pick that up. They don't want to get that viral, but yet they'll tell lies about what's happening in Gaza to stir up anti-Semitism. So, and then what we see in Europe, more of this. Church attacks rise across France amid Christianophobia warning. So, we're seeing this all across Europe now. It says with Christian churches facing fire threats and attacks, France is seeing a rise of hatred against believers. But what does that mean for us who still stand firm? An increased number of attacks targeting churches and clergy across France have raised concerns over a surge in what is deemed Christianophobia. Recent incidents include physical assaults, threats of arson, and desecration of churches, the Christian Post reported. Shortly after celebrating evening mass on May 10th at the Notre Dame de Bon Repos Church in this place, a group of young men believed to be between 15 and 20 years old shouted anti-Christian insults, yelled Allah Akbar before threatening Father Lauren Millen that they would burn down the church. The priest subsequently filed a police report, and authorities stood outside the church the next day to secure the Sunday Mass. 3 days prior to the incident, Father Millen told the French daily newspaper La Provence that another group interrupted a parish meeting at the church and was banging on the windows. At the same time, however, he says the attack wasn't personal, but directed against the Catholic faith. Earlier this month, a church in Saint Agrafe, southern France, was broken into, including the tabernacle being ripped open and the Eucharist was removed. Additional recent attacks include the vandalism of the parish hall of Saint Laurent in south of Paris and a church in separate incidents. In a recent intelligence report, 31% of religiously motivated offensive in France in 2024 were classified as anti-Christian, with a 30% increase in arson attacks on Christian places of worship. Meanwhile, there was a 62% increase in anti-Semitic acts, while anti-Muslim incidents only made up 7%. So you go figure. And then, of course, what about what's going on in we're going to see the evil good and good and evil that we quoted earlier, what's happening in the UK. The first story is the legalize weed, says London Mayor Sadiq Khan. Of course, we know London Mayor is now a Muslim, but, it says smoke it if you got it. That's pretty much sums up the approach of London Mayor Sadiq Khan to personal drug use as he backed calls Wednesday for small quantities of cannabis to be decriminalized and negate problems between police and ethnic communities. They're going to legalize pot, but what are they going to outlaw in UK? Let's watch this and you'll see.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, the Labour-ran Rushmore Borough Council has sparked outrage by proposing a sweeping injunction that could see Christian street preachers in prison for up to 2 years. And if the injunction is breached, now over claims of causing offence or distress. Now, under the proposed terms, Christians will be banned from praying for individuals, handing out religious leaflets or Bibles by hand, and laying hands on people in prayer, even with their permission.
So you legalize pot and decriminalize Christianity. That spells demonic, or what did we read about earlier? The mystery of iniquity has already been revealed. We see it happening all around us. And this is you can't even get eviler than this. Prophecy Newswatch, Canada wants to allow assisted suicide for children. Unbelievable, but true. There are moments when the news takes your breath away, not in wonder, but in horror. Canada is now considering expanding its medical assistance in dying, it's called MAID, program to include what is chillingly refers to as mature minors. That means children. Yes, children could soon be deemed eligible for state-assisted suicide, even without their parents' knowledge or consent. So if you're not telling me the world's getting eviler and eviler and darker every day, then I don't know what to tell you. But I hate to do this, but I want to leave you with a picture of how bad the church is in Germany. This video here is going to be quite shocking for you to see how bad the church is getting. Now, Pastor Chuck, one of my mentors, the founder of Calvary Chapel, he always said that if you bring them in with wow, you got to keep them with wow. But what happens when the wow runs out and you got no more wow? Then I guess that what you're going to present to the church would look kind of like this. I don't know what is supposed to be called. I know that Pastor Billy Crone, who's seen this video, thinks it's the epitome of all evil that could possibly ever be conjured up in a church. But this is a Catholic church in Germany. This actually really happened. I am not making this up, but I don't know what to tell you guys. But we were told these things would happen. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Now the Spirit expressly says that in the later times some will depart from the faith, giving heeds to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies and hypocrisies, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron, and dancing around on stage with raw chickens, flapping them around like they're flying. And if you notice, they're all wrapped in they had diapers on them. So I don't know what quite that all is, but that's how insane things have gotten. This is insanity. When deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons will drive the people that call themselves Christians totally insane, because they don't have the Spirit of God. They have the demons that are the ones directing them. And of course, and then 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 3 and 4, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, I guess when they run out of wow, they'll dance around on stage with chickens because they have itching ears. They will heap up for themselves teachers and will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. So that's, what we have, the breaking news that we had this week. And it doesn't look good in the world today. We have, the division in our country, and just think that we're, just because they're exposing some of the lies that we were talking about before doesn't mean that they're not going to get power again and continue these things on, because we know that's where everything is headed. And so, just keep looking up and know that your redemption draws near. And if you've been watching this and maybe getting a laugh out of the video and interesting in the stories, but you've never placed your faith and trust in Christ, I need to tell you that these are all signs that the Lord is coming again very soon. We don't do these things just to, do news stories. They're to warn the church and to encourage the church to look up and know that our redemption draws near, and to tell the people like you that have not placed your faith and trust in Christ, it's time to get right with the Lord. You need to place your faith and trust in Christ. He died for your sins and rose again from the dead. He provides for you salvation that you need to have in order to escape this wicked world that's headed to judgment. And so you need to do it now before it's too late. And for the rest of us, we need to be urgent about our discipleship, for our evangelism, for our walk with the Lord, because the Lord's coming back soon. There are many of us probably involved in things that we would be ashamed of if the Lord came back and found us doing. Maybe it's time to clean that stuff up. Maybe it's kind of look and say, man, I just watched the news and things are getting pretty crazy out there. I better get my life together. And you could do that right now. It doesn't take but for a moment for you to decide that you're going to sow to the Spirit with your life. And so I would recommend that you do that, because I believe that the Lord is coming back at any moment. And many of you do too. And so just continue to look up and know that your redemption draws near. And as I always end, like I start, Maranatha. If you have been blessed by this podcast, please subscribe and share to help get the word out in these last days. If you'd like more information or to contact us, please go to calvarysolidground.com. God bless you, and see you next time on Apologetics and Prophecy.